Dionne Warwick, a good friend for many years, Glenn Campbell, and Flip Wilson, whom I'd begun dating, were among the celebrities attending our opening night. You just going to leave it right there, Mary Wilson? You ain't going to get into how you and Geraldine was bumping foot? My world is filled with cheer and you. Da-na-na-na-na. This Christmas. Hello there, love bugs. Hello there, bells. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and tip your favorite narrator via Cash App at $NAROB on YouTube. And if you're not already a part of this book club, please hit the Patreon link below and or the join button here on the YouTube. And for a monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes, you can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, remember in 2024, I said I was going to move forward. Now it's 2025. We finna move back to Mary Wilson's Supreme Faith. What do the lonely do at Christmas? Oh, what do the lonely do? Pretend, y'all. At Christmas time. The emotions stuck their foot in. What do the lonely do at Christmas? What do they do? What do they know what the lonely do at Christmas? Get on the YouTube and listen to NAROB talk her shit. Dressed in identical red sequined pantsuits, Cindy and I stood in the wings while Jean took her place on stage and began singing. If they could see me now, that dear old gang of mine, eating fancy chow and drinking fancy wine, we joined her after the first few lines of the medley, which included "Nothing Can Stop Us Now," and fell into the routine as if we'd been doing it together forever. Jean appeared serene and confident, and Cindy and I felt more certain about her with every note. Next, we lip-synced or mouthed the words to the pre-recorded track of Up the Ladder to the Roof, set for release the following day. Mr. Sullivan then called us over for one of his chats. He introduced Cindy as Cindy Birdstone, and for a moment looked as if he wasn't sure which of us was Jean. That's because that goddamn Ed Sullivan done had the dementia since he came out the vagina. If you don't know Ed Sullivan for nothing else, and I learned this from reading so many books, that goddamn Ed Sullivan constantly got shiz wrong, but he still progressed through the ranks, maybe because he was a lovable character. Okay, but he always said shiz wrong. He started on the radio saying shiz wrong. Ended up going on the television saying shiz wrongs. But they was like, it said, what can you do? By week's end, we were opening at the Fairmont Hotel in Dallas. As I viewed our itinerary for the coming year, I saw it was filled with the same great venues we had played in the past and was every bit as hectic. What excited the fans was that the formula of our act had changed. Instead of there being only one lead singer, Jean and I now shared leads. Oof. Inevitably, this lineup was compared to its predecessor, and Jean compared to Diane. Gene anticipated reporters' questions about Diane. In April, Motown released Farewell, a lavish boxed double album documentary of Diane's last show with us. Charting at just number 46, it wasn't one of our top-selling LPs. A couple of months later, our first album with Gene, Right On, was on its way to a solid number 25. Not the best showing the Supremes ever had, but certainly better than our last releases before Diane left. The next big date looming for us was New York's Copacabana. It was so inspiring to stand on a stage where the Supremes had made history and to feel we could do it again. Dionne Warwick, a good friend for many years, Glenn Campbell and Flip Wilson, whom I'd begun dating, were among the celebrities attending our opening night. You just going to leave it right there, Mary Wilson? You ain't going to get into how you and Geraldine was bumping? Did y'all have some kind of freaky deaky going on? Like, you just going to leave it right there? Y'all was just dating? I mean, ooh, that was so dry. Mary, I expect better from you, Mary Wilson. The consensus was that Gene was certainly different from Diane, but it was a welcome difference. In most comparisons, Gene came out on top, especially as a singer. They felt her stage presence was more natural. Over the next few weeks, we appeared before sellout crowds in Washington, D.C. and San Francisco. Considering all the positive signs, I almost forgot about Barry's threat to wash his hands of the Supremes. In only a few months, we had proved ourselves on television, on stage, and on the charts. Up the ladder to the roof was on its way to number 10 here and number 6 in England. I felt stronger every day. Number 1, I thought, nothing, not even Barry, can stop us now. It still befuddling to me. Like, why did he wake up and call Mary and just was like, okay, we about to throw out Gene? Like, was that one of his mental games he was playing with Mary Wilson? Was he just messing with her, or was he just being an ass? Like, what was that about? You know, nonetheless, he's still working with it. Okay, Gene, she's still here. Mary Wilson looking at Barry like, I thought you was going to, cancel the bitch, but it didn't happen. So now what? What changed from the day that you just woke up and said, we about to change lead singers? It's weird. New York City and Los Angeles are the centers of the entertainment world. And as the original Supremes started doing more television work, we often found ourselves on the West Coast for weeks at a time. Motown even established an office there in 1965. My main reason for moving west in 1969 was to have a private life away from Motown and its chaperones. Initially, Cindy and I stayed at the Beverly Cornstalk Hotel. We felt like two kids running away from home. In 1965, when Diane Flo and I even bought our first house on Detroit's west side, I never imagined that I wouldn't live there for the rest of my life. This was my home. But when the Detroit riots hit, everything changed. As much as I hated to leave my hometown, my mind was made up. We were stars, and I was going where the other stars lived. I initially rented a house in Nicholas Canyon in the Hollywood Hills. Less than 6 months after moving west and living in a rented house, I found my dream home tucked away in the Hollywood Hills on Rising Glen Road. It was a beautiful ranch-style house that overlooked the entire city. The view of Hollywood was fantastic, and on a clear day, you could see all the way to Catalina Island. It was truly a dream come true. It was a fantastic house, and at first I filled it with dogs and cats and friends. Now that I had a secure, promising future, I longed for someone to care for, someone with whom I could share the life I'd built, a husband and children. At the time, my older cousin, Christine, had several children. Her eldest son, Willie, was 11 and seemed to need more attention than her other kids. Whenever I was in Detroit, I'd make the rounds visiting all my extended family. Willie's grandmother told me that he had a discipline problem and that they were considering placing him in reform school. One thing about that family is, they don't have no problem raising somebody else's children, because remember, Mary Wilson wasn't raised by her mother initially. They took Mary Wilson, and I forgot where she lived, but one of her family members had took her and gave her a very lavish life. How she got over there to the Brewster's Projects was that her mammy took her back. And now, which worked out well for her because she ended up being a Supreme. So what her family extended to her is what she extended to her little cousin, Willie. The situation with Willie paralleled my own childhood because my natural mother was unable to care for me when I was 3. Her sister, my aunt Ivy, and her husband, John L. Pippin, took me to Detroit. I lived with them until I was 10. In a way, I tried to recreate for Willie the good parts of my experience with Ivy and John. I showered him with love and many of the luxuries he didn't have at home. I found instant motherhood fulfilling. Caring for Willie gave my life balance. No matter what else you've accomplished, learning to handle a child is a unique, rewarding challenge. I could believe that, but guess what? Taking care of my little sister was enough for me. I told y'all I was an old selfish bitch. I went through enough. I was doing way more for a child that wasn't mine way too early. Not all of it was easy. I was a single working mother with many hats, or in my case, wigs to juggle. Whenever possible, I took Willie along with me. He had some wonderful experiences, such as meeting royalty in England and counting among his friends some of the Jackson 5. However, growing up in Hollywood had its drawbacks too. And I'm afraid that he was also exposed to things most kids don't see until their late teens. Like any working mother, I wondered if I was doing the right thing for my son by continuing my career instead of staying home. When I was growing up, I had always heard about wild Hollywood parties. I started frequenting popular, exclusive private clubs in Beverly Hills, such as the Candy Store, the Daisy, and Pips, where on any given night you could run into Peter Lawford, Liz Taylor, Tom Jones. Ain't Tom Jones the dick that she was hunching on? Tom Jones, Joe Namath, and countless others. It was at this time that I really got into the Hollywood night scene. I loved entertaining friends. Soon my house was filled with people like Diane Carroll, the Dells, the Pointer Sisters. Pause. Don't forget, we read one book. I can't remember which book because we read so many Motown books where Diana Ross was down there kicking and cooing with the Dells. I'm sure it was the Tony Turner book. Oh, that book was so enlightening. Okay, but I'm sure it was the Tony Turner book and it was the Dells or the Delphonics. Something like that. My bad. And one of the chaperones, it was a lady who ran upstairs and told Barry Gordy, Barry, Diana Ross down there snuggling with one of the Dells. The Pointer Sisters. Ron Isley, TV's Tarzan. Wow, you around there partying with Tarzan, girl? Brock Peters and his wife, Lola Falana. Glenn Turman, who later married Aretha Franklin and Lincoln Kilpatrick, just to name a few. I had been protected from the devastation of the psychedelic drugs that were prevalent in the late 60s and became so popular with the counterculture. The Supremes were considered goody two-shoes compared to Jimi Hendrix, Sly and the Family Stone, and Janis Joplin. For those of you who keep saying, "Nay, read Sly, Nay," he's on the list for 2025. Because marijuana had gradually crept into all walks of life, it was something that I would tolerate, but had no desire to indulge in. Even doctors and lawyers would smoke a joint after a hectic day. One day in early 1969, I told one member of a very popular singing group, "Girl, if you ain't gonna say the name, don't fucking say it. Don't mention the shit. If you have to smoke that, go out in the backyard because I don't want it in my house." I was square. I don't know about square, but I don't want to smell that shit in my house. I don't want that skunk shit in my house. So I don't think that makes you square. I think it makes it, I don't want that smoke in my walls. To say that I was naive about drugs is an understatement. For several months, I dated a guy who, unbeknownst to me, smoked marijuana regularly. I never understood why he simply smiled at me whenever I offered him a drink and told him to loosen up. When I ran into him a few years later, he laughed because he said, "It was so funny. I used to just die laughing because you were trying to loosen me up with drinks and I was already mellow from the joint I just smoked." One night, while I still lived in my rented house, some friends and I decided to play bullshit. This is a verbal game that we used to play with our Motown cronies like Gladys Knight and the Pips while touring. However, as the night got later and the drinks flowed, we turned this already crazy game into an even hotter and more exciting event. The fuck?